Picking up where Mr. Woodard left off with this slide, semantic memory, episodic memory, and procedural memory. Now, semantic and episodic, again, part of declarative memory. I don't know why, but I remembered a story from this summer, Bear in the Woods. I'm going to run with that for this little example. Semantic memory is going to be, all right, I'm going hiking in the woods. I need to know more about black bears. So I find out that black bears are about 4 to 7 feet long. They're about 2 to 3 feet high. They can weigh up a couple 100 pounds, up to 300 pounds. And probably most importantly for me, they can run around 30 miles an hour, top speed. Okay, that's all semantic memory. I can remember the facts and the figures about the bears. Now, let's say I really do run into a bear in the woods on my hike. That's going to generate an episodic memory. I fortunately did not run into a bear on the hike. My son did, though, about a week later. He remembers that story quite well. He's fine. Before we went on our hikes, our respective hikes, we bought bear spray. And on the bear spray, it was very, very adamant in the instructions. Practice with this before you go out into the woods. Not necessarily literally spraying it, although they did say you could do that. Just a quick burst out in the middle of the street away from everybody. But their point was practice. Know what to do in order to make it procedural memory. You don't want to encounter a bear in the woods and start having to think, what should I do right now? Oh, I've got this bear spray. I wonder how I use it. No, you have absolutely no time for that. You need to have made it procedural memory so you can go grab the bear spray and save yourself. Okay, so again, those are the three parts of that long-term memory. Now, as far as long-term memory is concerned, one of the neurological terms that we need to know, and we'll talk more about this in chapter 3, is long-term potentiation. Basically, we have these neurons in our brains, and there's synapses that are between those neurons, and when those synapses become stronger, the communication between the neurons is faster, and the communication is clearer between the neurons. Our memories are clearer. So long-term potentiation or consolidation are going to be terms we need to know. Again, we'll get more into that in chapter 3. I love this metaphor for memory because too many people think in terms of memory as, well, what do you remember? How many, can you remember every single detail about that incident? And most of the time it's no. Our brains are wired to make sense of things. Our brains want to learn things by hooking it in to what we've already learned. They want an easy path to understanding. Our brains want to make sense of the world around us. So they're going to interpret things. If the bear in the woods comes charging after me, my recollection of that particular episode might not be perfect. I might not remember every little detail because my brain is trying to make sense of everything that's going on in a very, very fast amount of time. Now, if I see the bear in the woods and it's way over there and I know I'm pretty safe, I've got to be cautious, but I know I'm going to be safe, my memory might be better of that particular incident simply because I have more time for my brain to interpret it. It's not going to ever be perfect as far as remembering every single detail. And we'll talk more about eyewitness accounts later on. Mr. Woodard mentioned our memories can be fallible. They can make mistakes. And it's because the brain is trying to interpret and make sense out of things that sometimes don't make sense. All right, human memory is very good at several different things. And for this one, just think about yourself in class. When you're focused in class, your attention is focused. You're going to remember the information more. If you're interested in what you're learning, you're going to remember the information more. I think that's one of the reasons that our students do quite well on the AP Psych exam, is that they are interested in the information. The content of this class engages students. Information that arouses us emotionally. If we do encounter that bear in the woods and we get really scared, again, we might not remember every single detail, but we're going to remember the episode quite well. If we have a really good time with a friend at a movie or something, not right now because it's COVID, but if we have a really good time, if we go on a really good date, whatever it might be, we're going to remember that because it made us happy. Okay? Memory is good at things that stir our emotions. Information that fits with our previous experiences. It's what we've been talking about. If we can latch new information to long-term memory, our brains are going to be able to make more sense out of that new information that's coming in. So we want to fit it with our previous experiences. And information that we rehearse, easy example there. You probably can't remember the 11th day in the 12 days of Christmas. We can always remember the 1st and we can always remember the 5th, but it's hard to remember the 11th. Okay? When we rehearse information, we're better at remembering it. Okay? Now, retrieval of memories is going to depend on how well, and we'll talk about implicit and explicit here in a second, how well we encoded the memory and how well it is cued. So let's say, meet the bear in the woods. I'm pretty safe, but it's a little bit jarring. Maybe it's a little closer than I would like. Okay? I'm going to encode that memory fairly well because I didn't have to run away. Things weren't going on too quick, but the heart was racing, so the emotions were aroused. Okay, so I might encode that pretty well. Now, I come home and 4 weeks later, I try to tell that story. I might not be able to tell it quite as well as if I tried to tell that story back in the exact same spot I saw the bear. If I come home and I'm just trying to tell it over dinner to the family, I'm not cueing it necessarily I'm obviously not cueing it in the same spot that episode actually happened, and so my memory might not be as clear because it's not being cued quite correctly. Now, you don't have to be in the exact same spot for a memory to come back clearly, but that's an example of what we mean by cueing that memory. Okay? This is kind of fun. Real quick, answer these as fast as you can. What's the name of a spinning toy? What's another name for soda? What's another name for a police officer? What do you do when you get to a green light? Okay, if you said stop, it's just because I primed you. It's called priming. Our memories get primed really easily. And with the other op words as answers to the previous questions, when you get to a green light, people want to say stop because their brains have been primed, even though obviously that's not the correct answer. Okay, implicit memory is going to be memory that's acquired and used unconsciously. You weren't consciously thinking, oh, what do I do when I get to a green light? No, your memory just popped out an answer real quick. Okay, and I was kind of forcing that by hitting the questions pretty quickly. Mere exposure effect, which we talked about last chapter, just being around somebody quite a bit, we might start to get to like them a little bit more. Okay, we're not consciously thinking about that. Our unconscious is working on us. Okay, procedural memory. Being able to spray the can of bear spray in the woods. Okay, that's implicit memory. We don't have to consciously think about it. Okay, oops, hit the wrong button there. There we go. Explicit memory is going to be those things that we do think consciously about. Okay, we try to remember that number. We try to remember that series of letters. We try to remember that data about the bear. Okay, that's explicit memory, and I'm going to consciously recall it. Okay. I'm going to let Mr. Woodard take over. I know he loves talking about mnemonics. He's good with mnemonics, so I will stop there and let Mr. Woodard take over.